I see education as a huge opportunity. Like Bart was mentioning, how to play piano, but it can be anything, basically arts and crafts, where you have to physically do something and it's basically mimicking, or you have to follow some instructions, you have to break something apart, you have to build something which requires skill, and usually this is done with tutoring, somebody showing you how to do it or looking after you and guiding your way. Now that can be done automatically. Also in the schools, it's easier to demonstrate things and do things. So altogether, I think the education, self-learning is a huge market. B2B maintenance services is an area where AR is already now being used quite successfully, and it's reducing costs. You don't need to send people over, specialists from another side of the planet, to fix something which is trivial, in a way that if you can just guide the person who is not a specialist in the field. So they use it in the remote service centers, AR tools, having a view for the local spot, and then guiding the non-specialist how to do the proceeding, whatever that is. I don't believe, outside of tech sector, that the regular Zooms and Teams gonna go to the Vision AR way anytime near soon. The reason is that if you look what happened to the COVID remote working time, a lot of people didn't actually have proper cameras, they didn't have proper mics, they didn't have a proper setup, even though that was their primary place of work and they needed to adjust, and it was a good excuse, and not even an excuse, to upgrade their stuff, and maybe the company even compensated for all those upgrades. You still have people who are not actually properly using the cameras, mics, and the audio is horrible. So it's going to take a long time, but I don't think the incentive is there for people to do it better. If that would be, they would actually buy good mics for the sake of their audience, but even that is not happening. If there's one use case which might be interesting, and this is what I was wondering, how soon we start to see people, business travelers, using Vision because they're on the road. Can it be actually the next privacy thing? You don't want to expose your laptop with all the cameras and everything around. You don't want to maybe type with the keyboard because everything is tracked and seen. So if you can just use the Vision and nothing leaks out, you don't need to speak, at least with your outer voice. If there's a way to speak without making sound, maybe that's even a way to be in the Zooms and meetings. But I think that might be interesting use case, which can be used by the salespeople, people who are on the field, traveling. And that could be something as well, where AR headset, even though you may look ridiculous, but still it's like you're working alone, and it has the benefits because you don't need to carry that heavy equipment with you. Any of the trade skills where you actually have to use both of your hands and physically do something, I think that's a tremendous thing where a lot of things can be improved. So it can be obviously something like surgery, it can be something which is just plumbing, it can be hairdressing, it can be basically anything where you need your hands, and the virtual testing or practicing is really handy. But it's also like in education, I can imagine that you could just visit the solar system, put atoms in place and do a lot of things just by visually having them in front of you. So I think that there's a huge potential in this in some particular field. The Disney cooperation, there were already somebody suggesting that Apple should buy Disney. I'm not sure whether it's a good idea. I just come to think of Nokia in the early 2000s when they started to compete with the customers, with the operators. Maybe that's the same thing if Apple goes too deeply to the content creation, being the manufacturer of the devices. Finally, when we start to have a good audiobooks read by AI, they may become redundant. Not redundant, but the next thing might be actually storytelling in AR. I already heard about some theater productions and this type of things happening in the COVID times, but imagine that storytelling, plays, can be animations, any type of content can become live, even your history lesson. in your living room or wherever you are. And I think that's a really fascinating new chapter as well. Is it actually the next level of consuming your content, fiction, non-fiction content as well? Apple is in a really interesting era now with the gaming platform Unity Corporation, also with AI-created movies, animations which are coming alive, becoming full-scale, full-blown trailers, short stories, Netflix type of a series almost in a few years out of a text prompts or whatever the multimodal first origin source is. And I think this is really fascinating if you start to see all these things converting to AR space.